Hey everybody, Dr. Tim here, of course with Dr. Steve Taubman, and together we make up the Ouch Doctors. And just a reminder that you're going to hear some medical information here. We're not diagnosing anybody. We're not making any treatment recommendations. We're just exploring some health topics, and it's up to you to take responsibility and do your own research, talk to your own doctors, and so on and so forth. And if you'd like to get all our shows, our backlog of many shows on YouTube, it's New Thinking About Old Pain on YouTube. So search that there and enjoy. What do you think,
guys? Remember, we love to get your feedback. So if you'd like to share anything with us, or either during the show or after the show's over, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd like to get back to everybody who gets through to us. And we look forward to continuing with you. We've also got an awesome product and program that we just released, and it's called Relief Rocket. And if you're not already familiar with it, go over to thereliefrocket.com and pick up a copy of our brand new program. It's only $37, and it's a great program to show you step-by-step how to use your brain to overcome pain. Super cool stuff.
It's super cool stuff, but it's not overwhelming. It's very easily institutable into your life. And we're just both of us so super proud of it.
We really are. And today we are very excited about bringing a guest. We've got a friend here with us today, Dr. Erin Sepic. I'm going to bring her on here in just a moment. And Dr. Erin has been practicing chiropractic for a number of years, but she's more than just a chiropractor. She has a really broad understanding of healing. And we're going to talk today about the truth about healing, what is real healing, kind of take a higher vision approach of healing in general. And I'm very excited to welcome our wonderful guest with you today. And here comes Dr. Erin Sepic. Dr. Erin, hey.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, we're excited about this. We've both been eager to have you on ever since we had a day on your sailboat and eating amazing steak tips. Best steak tips I ever had.
I love it.
3 chiropractors on a boat. Who would have thought?
I know, right? Never.
It's got to be a joke, right? There are 3 chiropractors on a boat, and there's got to be something in there about adjusting.
Yeah, we got to work on that.
We're good at adjusting the sails or something like that.
Oh,
man. So Erin, thank you, first of all, for being with us. And what appeals to me about you and your work is that, you don't stop at just what we learned in school about adjusting the spine. You really are looking at healing in a very broad perspective. Can you talk a little bit about what is healing to you?
Yeah. I was thinking. Yeah, I was starting to answer that question in my head, and then when you answered that sort of broad-based, what is healing? I was like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think I remember a moment in my senior year in chiro school where it was my first semester in clinic. So I kind of was really excited to I knew all this stuff, and I was finally working with people. And pretty quickly, I was just like, this was and I'm a huge fan of our industry in all forms. Chiropractic is one of the most incredible art forms out there, in my opinion.
I agree.
And still, that last year, I remember looking around being like, wait a minute, I could do the same adjustments to the same areas of 80% of my patients every 2 weeks for the rest of my life. And it's not why I went to school. It's not why I learned all this stuff. Wait a minute, there's got to be way more here. There's got to be more than meeting on a regular basis and trying to undo what the world does. There's got to be a way I can teach them to or whatever. So I ended up going to my neurology professor and being like, I just spent a lot of money that I don't have learning this stuff. And she's like, oh, you need an AK class. And I was like, AK? Isn't that wacky, muscle testing? Oh, you're allergic to pineapple. And she's like, not really. So luckily, Jean Charles came up from Manhattan to teach us for years. I took 200-hour certifications with him. And I'd never seen anybody, one of the smartest people I've ever met on the planet, I think. And also one of the best adjusters. And a lot of people had said that AK, applied kinesiology, is a way to get around needing to be a good adjuster. And he was everybody was like, how do you just do that? So it sort of shattered all the fairly pompous conclusions and assumptions that I'd had about, the different realms of our profession. And that's how I got going. I was like, oh, this is what I wanted. There's a whole other, there's an iceberg, and that's sort of what AK presented. So I dove in with both feet, and that's how I started my practice. But I was really pediatric, passionate even then, and sort of had that whole. I have a lot of energy. You guys know me. There's in there. And when I was first in practice, I remember just like, I'm going to just change the whole obstetrical model. We got to be like more, physiologically and neurologically in alignment when we're in L&D and this and that. And that was sort of where I was going. And then pretty quickly, I sort of realized that the fundamental resistance, which you've probably talked about being the of most pain, like my resistance to what was, and my desire and the power I was putting behind my desire to change it and shift it was really coming from a place of judgment and attachment. And there was not a lot of real power in there. There's a lot of energy, a lot of fire, but that wasn't the way to get anywhere. And slowly I figured that out.
So are you talking about that experience that you have early in practice when you're sort of passionate about an idea, but now you're kind of neurotic about trying to get everybody else to agree and believe that idea, and then you become you're fighting a battle before they even start saying anything?
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, I've pretty good soft skills, so I'm not as militant as some of us, but yeah, that's essentially what happened. And then I was like, I'm actually in total resistance and judgment. And when you're in that place, no one you're talking to is going to actually hear you. You're not speaking from a place of alignment, of heart, and of your real truth. It's just like, let's paint a picture of what could be and see what they might choose, and or how that might happen. So that was my start in practice. And then I think that's how my intuitive stuff started surfacing, is because I work a lot on newborns. And I work a lot with athletes and people in all stages of life, but I've done a lot of advanced certifications and diplomate in pediatrics and things like that. So infant care is something I'm really passionate about. And you can't talk to infants. They can't tell you what hurts and where. And so slowly I began, especially after a dear friend of mine, God, I'm so lucky to have friends like these, who's a world-class craniosacral therapist. She started working on me. We started doing trades. And as soon as she started working on me, my work started shifting, especially with infants. And I could just feel more and see more with my hands. And then everything else started. And probably a few years after that, I literally had an encounter with a patient, a grown man, a very high corporate functioning guy, who had a very good sense of humor, but he had this terrible kind of frozen shoulder, but not quite. And it was so painful for him. And this guy had to move his body to keep himself sane. And I literally heard a voice while I was holding his shoulder. I heard a voice tell me the words 18. I think it was 16, and angry. And I remember being like, what has happened? And then just checking with like whatever, I figure when we're not alone in this world, right? We all have like people with us. And I asked whatever people were with me at the time, I was just like, is this okay to tell this guy? And I just asked him out of nowhere. I was like, what were you angry about when you were 16, And he stopped and he looked at me and he was like, well, that was random. And I said, yeah. And then he started telling me about this senior football season, and he got injured in the semis. And they were slated to win the state championship. And he wasn't able to play in the final game because his shoulder was really buggered. And so they lost the final. And he never forgave himself. And he was so angry. And he still, as he was talking about it, the shoulder just kind of melted under my hands. And we were done with the treatment. And he stood up and he raised his shoulder. And he was like, what the hell? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, okay. And he said 20 people in after that. What is that?
Erin, that's a fascinating story. I was hanging on every word right there. So it brings us to another question that I think we have is how much, like, you had that voice speak to you from somewhere that and then you kind of launched on your intuitive, you tapped into that intuitive part. So how much on the patient though, how much do you think the chronic pain, maybe 100% or 25%, was due to that psychological trauma that he had at 16, and how much to tissue damage, or what we traditionally, everybody in the world, every healer in the world looks at a frozen shoulder about PT and drugs and
about a year.
How much was physical and how much do you believe was mental, as an example?
This is just a great conversation to have. In his case, I mean, he had done some damage, there's no doubt. But clearly, based on what happened, and this is what disintegrates most of these arguments, right? It's like he suddenly had full range of motion with no pain. I know he had tissue damage. I know I have tissue damage in a couple of different places, but I don't have any pain and I have full function. And I think, and honestly, the way I see it intuitively as well is as we're evolving, slowly those psychoses surface to the top. I don't know what you think about this, both of you guys, but at this point for, been about 18 months since this had been a big fish we were frying. Usually it was a neck, like all of the stuff came out of his neck, but there was a separate tissue and an emotional thing here. So I think as we progress, and I believe as we can handle unwinding these pieces, they surface in time for us to unwind it with people in our lives that can hold the space for us to do that. So in his case, I think you're asking?
Yeah, and just as an extension, other people.
As an extension, right.
Because where Steve and I are coming from this.
I'm right there with you guys. I think what I've learned, and I kind of knew this, but I didn't understand it. That everything exists in the energy body before it shows up in the physical body and the physiologic body. And once you understand that to be true, kind of like there's no holes in that bucket anymore. So yeah, when this whole thing happened and I was like, oh my God, I need some training. I don't understand what to do with this. Like, this is not okay. So I was like, I had a session with a lady out of New Jersey who literally cold called me, which was hilarious. And I think we did 2 sessions together. She was like, you need an intuitive coach. I was like, okay. I remember hanging up the phone being like, what the hell is that? Like, you don't look at that up in the yellow pages. And I just set it out to the universe. And literally the next morning, my office manager plopped the mail on my desk. There was a big stack of stuff. On the top of it was a pamphlet from my teacher, intuitive coach. I was like, one of those like super goosebump moments where and it's the only flyer she ever sent out. She probably sent out 50. I don't know, like when you're psychic, where to put your stuff. Like, I don't know. Right. But I've been training with her and her partner ever since. So one of them is a medical doctor, a brilliant integrative medicine board certified specialist, DOMD, and one is a creative. And after I learned how to, manage my intuition and use it for everyone's better outcomes, I suppose, things started shifting quite a bit. And then, of course, I started shifting. So that's kind of how that all happened. First pain, and then there's a program, and then there was the AK, and then there was the intuition. Oh God, and now I'm wherever I am.
What I love about that is that it was, you were pulled towards it, that you didn't come at it, from the very beginning saying, I think I'm going to learn how to be an intuitive or something like that, but rather, you were sensing things through whatever modalities we sense things, whether some subtle energy experience or some subtle awareness of something else we're picking up on. But then you followed up on it, you took a chance and it worked. And because it worked, then you said, well, maybe there's something to this. That's pretty hard to refute, right? So then you start.
It's hard, right? Even if you don't understand it, you're like.
But if you have more and more experiences that support it, and it's not just your neurotic, crazy mind making this up, but you've got a bunch of people saying, I'm getting better. And it reminds me of Dr. Sarno, who basically said, so much of what we're experiencing comes from our minds, from our emotions that we're burying and suppressing. And when I become quiet, when I become intuitive, when I open and give people the space to heal the emotion, the pain goes away.
Right.
Yeah, boy, he paid dearly for those. Yeah.
Well, thank goodness that it not us, right?
Yeah, amen. Yeah, it's interesting. And all this time we hold space for people, and I don't know your personal histories, but as we hold space for people to heal, I remember feeling that I didn't really. I think I told you about the last time I broke my ankle.
Yes.
Lots of volleyball. And Tim, I didn't tell you this, but
That's a great story. Yeah, tell that story.
I heard this story. So I was starting sort of my spiritual awakening, and I was living in the woods in Huntington, in a yurt, a mile from the nearest place you could leave a car. So that was where I was living. I was like, there was a whole bunch of like energy stuff shifting in me, and I just needed to like hold on to rocks and roots and dirt and stuff. I couldn't go near the lake. I couldn't go near, I couldn't be in the wind. I was just like, for about 18 months, I was up there.
Wow.
And I think at about month 13, 14, something like that, I thought I was finally ready to go back into the competitive like sports place. So I signed up to play the Essex League, the highest level competitive indoor league in the state. And people come from Hampshire and New York to come and play this. Guys save up all their honeydew points all year for 10 weeks in like September to November.
What sport are we talking about?
Volleyball. Okay. And I went and I was so psyched. Luckily, my mom was there for the weekend. I was so excited to play. I was like, but I understood energy now, and I was trying to figure out how to I was like, I can do this. I can be energetically literate and like not get swept away by the competitive testosterone blast or whatever. And I remember a friend of mine, I was blocking on the left side, and a friend of mine who's a 6'4" Swede, a beautiful man and a father and a massage therapist and a healer himself, he hit the ball and I blocked it. I don't remember how, but must have just been sheer joy. And I remember somebody covered it and picked it up, and they sent it back to this fellow. And he hit it again. And I remember like, oh yeah, all right. And I really blocked that one. And I don't know how they got it up, but they did. And then they sent it to him a third time. And this is when like a switch just flipped in me. Like I just, out of nowhere came this like intensity of like almost rage, but mostly indignation. Because if you understand the sport, you're like, oh, there's this like beautiful, tall, strong, blonde Swede somehow getting blocked by this like 6 foot like brunette. Like, what the hell? That can't be right. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And I just like lost my mind. And it's weird, like all these millennia of like this misogynistic oppression and like all of the women everywhere who ever put up with any kind of bullshit, like, pardon my French. I just like lost myself, and I jumped higher than I've probably ever jumped in my life. And I closed my hands around the ball like this. You can't touch it until he touches it. But he could do nothing. I was so outraged. And he literally poked it because he had to. And it went sailing up, and I was out of my body screaming at my team, like, cover the tip. And I came down, broke my foot. I was nowhere near my body. My foot broke, and it popped loud. Like 3 courts on that side of the gym, busy. Everyone heard it.
Sheesh.
Oof. And I was still vertical, and I was falling, and I was already laughing, and like, oh my God. I thought I was ready. I am not even close to ready to do this. Like, what the heck was that? Like my feet and my whole groundedness and all of my energy were literally like, really? Yeah, you had that. Totally. No, not at all. Like I literally just left all of my grounding that I'd spent the last year plus, like developing. Like I got into this space and like, nope, I'm not ready. And I like went down laughing. I like the ground laughing.
I love, I know there's more to the story, but I just wanted to stop it for a moment and say that I'm always intrigued by the idea of layers of consciousness, that as we, you're certainly a much more conscious and aware person, that just the fact that you could be laughing at yourself and saying, oh, I can't go there. And most people would never even get anywhere near that. They'd just be pissed off. And you're like laugh at being pissed off.
I was so humbled. I was probably as humbled as I've ever been, like top 3 in my life. I just remember thinking, oh my God. And all my buddies walked up like, do you need some tape? Like, are you going to be like, guys, I'm done for the night, if not the season. I'm pretty sure I broke my ankle. Like, I'm like, no. So luckily, but my mom was there, and she took me to go see Dr. Bill Schenk, who saw me first thing in the morning. So that was like 8 o'clock at night. And I had ice on it because it was starting to it was not good. So I elevated, I compressed everything, which of course we now know that ice is not to be used before 48 hours, but for decades, that's what we thought. So I go to see Bill, and he does AK on my ankle, does a bunch of magic. I'm in this amount of pain. I'm in a 10 of pain, relatively speaking. And then it's at least 30% better by the time I leave his office. He takes a film, we look at it, we're like, he hasn't seen a foot film in a long time. So we're like, I think, yeah, no. So I had a radiologist who was a patient stop by on our way back from work to read it for me. And I went to go see Charles Murdoch, who did some acupuncture around it and told me to stop using ice and gave me this disgusting yellow stuff to poultice it with. And then I was 30% better again. So, and then I had 40% left, and I had my craniosacral wizard girlfriend work on me. And literally, it just, in about 2 seconds of her really gentle contact, it just, like everything right in the middle of my ankle, just completely released. And that she'd been working on me for years. And she picked up her head and she was like, oh, I like acute work. I forget, And I was like, you forget? Like, you should be doing acute work all the time. But I'd never been in pain when she'd worked on me. And I was literally at a 0, 16 hours after I broke my ankle. I had no pain whatsoever. And I was like, what? And I remember thinking, okay, there's something here. Like, what the, and then I had to table it a little bit because I had to then learn how to live my life on crutches and not drive anywhere and get grocery drops. And like, I ended up skating around my office with my knee on one stool.
Oh.
It was pretty funny. Yeah, so it was a beautiful healing experience. And then I was telling Steve about the time that I had an autoimmune diagnosis, because at that point, like dealing with people in like fighting cancer or like chronic pain that no one could touch, that's like no one even wants to see you. I realized that I had never healed anything other than a broken bone or a sprain. You know, like I'd never. And then cue the raging Graves' disease and heart failure that resulted in about a year of rest. But I healed it in record time. I knew I would, but that really helped me understand like how to support patients who are really in the ditch. Like they actually need support from all angles, and help them understand how to navigate the healthcare system and the energy in the healthcare system, which is a whole other thing that a lot of people don't understand, particularly cancer survivors. So that was really a really special thing too.
We had the opportunity to be together when Court came out on the boat. And Court Davies is a friend who was a speaker, and he's a cancer patient. Talks a lot about mindset and mindfulness and its relationship to healing cancer, or at least healing whatever secondary experiences he's having with the cancer. And he's been able to far outlive his prognosis in a very full life sort of way. And I think one of the things that Dr. Tim and I, are always trying to do is to just put it out there that there's a whole other level of healing that's possible when you employ the possibilities of this infinite power of healing that we have. Now, that's not to say that everybody gets better. You can't always like count on the fact that you've gone beyond the limitation of matter, but you can count on the fact that you're going to turn the dial in the right direction rather than the wrong direction.
Totally.
And people just need to open up to what they call miracles. We don't even think of them as miracles. We think of them as just activating something that you didn't realize you had.
Yeah. Amen.
Right. And that's the only blockage really, is to just be aware. Patients are going to heal something with mind-body techniques, as long as they're just a little bit open to it. That's all it takes.
That's it. Sometimes I'll give people, like they ask for different types of information. I will give them information, and I co-treat more than anybody I know. I'm like, you should see this person. You know what? I'm not sure about these. Put them on flashcards and like sit and meditate on them, or wake up in the morning like intending to have an answer to which of these two practitioners is best in alignment. They're both fabulous. But I'm trying to coach people into understanding that they can actually be drawn more to one than the other, and like start making their own decisions that way.
What do you find? Because this is we're like right on the edge of, what some people would be like the touchy feely, or the
I'm over the edge.
woo woo, right? It's like, or maybe we're over the edge, but what do you say to the more analytical, pragmatic kind of person who's like, give me a break, so I'm going to think about this, so I'm going to like meditate on these two flashcards and somehow I'm going to be drawn to the right thing? That sounds a little bit like BS to me. Yeah. We've seen the power of it, but at the same time, it's pretty inexplicable. So how do you explain it to people who aren't already open to that?
I mean, normally I wouldn't give that to somebody who wasn't open, because if they stop, if they feel disconnected with their practitioner, they're not going to get the best.
That's true. Yeah.
So I'm careful about who I bring that up to. But a lot of my patients who aren't near the edge know I'm over the edge, and they just pretend to use me for my other stuff. It's really fun. I once had a woman come in for a crazy back thing. It was crazy. And it's one of the most dramatic energy healings I've ever had. And I only did it because I definitely got the green light and I got all the support I needed. And she called it an exorcism. And her husband came in 2 weeks later, because she left fine, and she entered with what felt like a spear in her spine. And he came in, he was like, so she came in, she said she had some kind of crazy like energy healing exorcism thing. Like, can you come in with my foot? Because I don't know what that was, but can you do your old stuff with my foot? Yes, I can. It's just so fun that's the situation. I think with people who are really left brain dominant, mostly I can point to a lot of studies that have been done. And again, I would only do this if I actually believe that they really need this and now. Usually there's something else going on already if they've come to me and that we're already having this discussion. Like there's something weird that they knew, or that, they banged a left instead of a right the other night and there was a crash right there. I'm like, what the hell? And then they're totally in the left brain, but they're starting to be, there's starting to be a little crumbling there. And then we start talking about what the bleep do we know, and the black box studies and all of we've done the studies, like we are all connected. We have this thing. And more importantly, the gateway that I use mostly with left brain folks is the functional neurology gateway, where you talk about your mindset level and its impact on the autonomic nervous system, and that's impact on your healing, period.
I think that's Dr. Tim and I, right? Would you agree that that's kind of where we go also, is to really talk about from the perspective of like your thoughts are things, they are neurologically measurable. You can see that things change when you change your thoughts. And it's kind of that whole Bruce Lipton biology of belief thing.
It does. And Joe Dispenza as well.
Joe Dispenza, yeah, absolutely.
But Joe is really tangible for left brain guys. If you need something to grab onto, he's a gateway drug. Bruce is a little further, but still has a lot of the science.
He is. Well, the thing is, I mean, he's a scientist, and he's an elite scientist, so that helps a lot.
Amazing.
So I'm looking at the time right now, and surprisingly, we're like coming up on the end of the time we scheduled. Believe it or not, it's crazy. But I'd love to kind of like put a nice bow around all this, and I'd like to give that to you, Erin. Is there any kind of sort of takeaway that you'd like to share that kind of, explains everything we're talking about?
I would say, if we're talking, are we talking to people who may or may not?
Yeah, what would be a tool or an exercise that's been really meaningful for you that would be really useful for our audience?
You know what? I think, can I say two things? I think first, for people with pain, if they haven't found practitioners like you two, and they know that there's a way out of this, they just haven't found it yet, I just like to reassure them that it's absolutely out there. There's no doubt. The kinds of things that I have seen and experienced too. I just want to reassure everyone and like empower them. And when you're ready to go down that rabbit hole or start that crazy journey, the more fear you can clear out of your consciousness, the better access you have to your own information. So we're talking about the flashcards or the this or the that, or you meet that person and you don't know why you don't like them. And you meet this person and like, son of a gun, it's 5 seconds. Like either way, how does that make any sense? It doesn't make sense. It's somewhere else. But if you can, especially if you're in pain and you are healing something significant, making sure that you just set the example consciously. You're just like thinking, Mom, I know you love me and I know you're terrified, but I'm going to let you hold your fear. I'm not going to hold you. I got this other 5 fish to fry. And best friends and spouses and children and practitioners, all of these, just constantly give them back their own energy about your thing. And then you can actually see straight, you can see straight.
That's great advice. I feel like you're right. We're surrounded, we're in a sea of negativity, and we've been taught to be negative. And then even if you're trying to be positive, like you said, your mom or your grandma or whatever is like, oh dear, this is terrible. And,
And they mean well, they're loving on us, but it's like, it's not productive. So it's not like you don't talk to them. You just set in your mind as she's going off about this. You have this little like highlight scoop, just like sending it back. And I find that that's really, really important because people know the practitioners that they can help, or that if they don't know they can get better, they go and find the stories like Anita Morjani. They go and find, like whatever they need to be like, somebody else did that. I'm sure I could, and that's when it starts. So I think like just keeping yourself clean when you're healing is important. Water is great. Soaking in whatever you want to. Sailing. Oh my God.
Are you inviting everybody out on your sailboat now? Anybody who's watching this gets a ride.
I'm considering starting a bit of a thing. I'm not sure.
Awesome.
It'd be so fun.
So the 2 bits of advice you just shared with us are great. They're really wonderful. So number 1 is kind of this recognizing that it is possible. There are people who can help you and support you. And number 2, be aware of your fear and the fear of those around you. Would you see that? That's it. Did I get them both, Tim?
You got them, dude.
Yay. And laughter too. My God.
It's so great. And laughter is so important. So fun. You have any good jokes for us before?
I wish. It's got to start with 3 chiropractors walking into a sailboat.
It's got to be right. That's good enough right there. I think.
Right?
Erin, thank you so much for being here. Stick around. We're going to end the broadcast, but we're going to have a little powwow here at the very end.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
But as we wrap up, Dr. Tim and I always like to end with our catchphrase: train your brain,
lose your pain.
Amen. Oh, I love that.